Hello, and welcome back to RetroActive, where the present is just a gift of dog poop. Of dog.
Thank you, Will.
You're welcome. You know, present, gift.
Yes, I understood that completely.
Okay, great. Dude, this is episode 12 now.
Episode 12. We made
Baker's
it.
dozen.
We made it. What?
A baker's dozen?
No, that's 13.
Oh, well, next week will be a baker's dozen. This one's just the dozen.
We made it 3 months here. Finally.
Somehow. So,
Woo.
What's been going on, Joey? You just got back from Emerald City Comic Con.
Yeah, well, okay, that was last week.
Last
in case
week.
people... No, I got back last week when I fake told everyone how it was. Now I'll real tell everyone how it is.
So how was it?
It was really cool.
Yeah? That's it?
That's it.
Just really cool. Period.
Yeah, so I think so Emerald City Comic Con is probably it's like one of the premier Comic Cons in the United States, I think.
Yeah, it's huge now.
Like I think I looked it up and maybe last year it had like 80,000 people
Jesus.
attend. So I assume it was even bigger this year.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that they really try to promote is like, I guess, independent comics, or a lot of like there wasn't a whole lot of presence from Marvel or DC or like the real big name ones.
Yeah, so it's not like San Diego Comic Con where all of these big name companies are coming
all the
in.
big names, all the huge movie stars. Like I didn't even really look up the list of people that like were attending the movie people, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, sell a lot of prints.
Yeah, I think so. Not a lot of Marvel ones, which is surprising.
Well, I mean, I guess not so much, considering, like you said, it's a little bit more based on the independent kind of comic scene and everything, too. I know that, like Oni Press and stuff is from Seattle,
Oni Press.
too.
So, I'll just talk about this real quick. Oni Press, they do the Invader Zim comics.
Yes.
You don't know, and we actually, Jonah Vasquez was actually there on like throughout the whole weekend, and so we actually got the first big book by him. Like I think it was maybe the first 6 issues of the comics in
like a trade paperback.
Yeah, in the trade.
Oh, okay.
And we got that, and then a couple other ones signed by him.
Nice.
So it was from what she had told me. She was like, she got in line, she gave the book to him, but he seemed like really distracted because there was probably like, I didn't see it, but the line was probably just like a mile long or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And he was just coming by and just picking it up and signing and just keep like almost like a machine. And
so it wasn't
like
as personal.
Yeah, like she was about to ask him like, "Oh, could you make it out to Chia?" And before she even said that, he was already writing it down.
Oh jeez. Oh, Jonan Vasquez.
Yeah, but he's cool.
Yeah.
Like, he seems like someone who doesn't really like doing all these signings and stuff.
Probably,
like,
yeah.
He seems like kind of he's like staying away from like this huge spotlight on him.
Yeah.
Always, people coming up to him always talking about Invader Zim nonstop.
I assume based on his work, he doesn't seem very big on being like a mainstream kind of
not really
guy,
which is fine.
Yeah,
I appreciate that from him.
Oh, right on.
Let's see what else. Oh, one of the booths that I kept going back to was Pink Gorilla.
Pink Gorilla.
And Pink Gorilla's they run a used game shop up in the Seattle area.
Oh,
and so they brought like a ton of their stock and like ton of all these like Nintendo and other video game plushes.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was really cool. They had like huge wall of all like NES, Super Nintendo, N64, and like pretty much all the used games they had.
I probably went to their booth too, like when I was up there for PAX Prime a couple of years ago. Yeah, because I remember seeing like quite a few of those kind of booths, and there was like a couple of really big ones too.
They had like a big tower of pink gorilla plushes.
Yeah.
But guess what I found there?
What'd you get?
I got Mischief Makers, which if you guys listened last week, it was one of my one of my great white whales of gaming.
Yeah, you finally got a copy of it.
Yeah, I'd never been able to play it. Never found a copy of it, but I got it.
Go figure. Go figure. The week that we run that episode, then you go out and you buy one of those games.
It was fate, I guess, or maybe they heard us. And thank you.
Thank you to Pink Gorilla.
Shout outs to Pink Gorilla for listening to our podcast, right?
Right. We're just gonna assume yes. They
knew
listen.
I was going to.
How much was that anyway?
It was $18.
18. Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
For like an old N64 game. Yeah. You certainly do
Guess what was guess what was more expensive than that?
What was more expensive?
They had a copy of Bebe's Kids there.
Oh,
for
God.
$20.
$20?
$20.
All
okay,
right.
people out there, if you don't know what Bebe's Kids are, you need help.
Well, I mean, at this point, like, you should probably pause the podcast for just a bit and go look it up really quick, just to see what it's about. And I mean, the funny thing is, we actually played that game.
It's a lost episode.
Yeah, we played that game for our YouTube channel it was probably a couple of years ago, like 2 years ago.
It was like one
maybe?
of the first things we ever recorded.
Yeah, like I think we were gonna do like a whole month of like awful games, and we decided to play Bébé's Kids, which is kind of like, it's a side scroller kind of beat 'em up game, but oh good lord, is it terrible? It's like the controls are bad. It's super slow. You half the time can't even figure out what you're supposed to do in the game.
No,
from what I remember.
It's only one player.
Oh yeah, and it's a single player.
Co-op.
Yeah, there's no co-op.
Well, the beat 'em up is just one player.
And there's so much space like in between, so much space like on the screen.
Well, yeah, let's just say everything about it is terrible.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if this was based off of a movie, which wasn't as terrible.
Yeah, it was kind of bad.
It was interesting to watch. Like,
yeah.
The movie was really, really like, it wasn't made for kids, I don't think.
I don't think so. Remind me about that movie again, because it's been a long time since I saw Bébé's Kids.
Okay, well, Bébé's Kids is basically, it's based off of a stand-up routine by the main character. What's his name? Robin Harris, who was, I guess, a big stand-up comedian at the time. And it's basically about him trying to woo this girl. He's like taking her out on a date, but then in addition to the kid that she has, she's also babysitting 3 other kids who belong to her friend who doesn't like care about them or whatever.
Her friend Bébé.
Her friend Bébé. So
whose kids is they? Bébé's Kids. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your line there. I just wanted to have something to say, while you're talking about the movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, the movie itself is probably one of the weirdest animated movies you'll ever see because, like I said, it's not really for kids in that a lot of the dialogue is not... It's not really structured. Like, a lot of it is just very stream of consciousness. Most of it is just the main character's ramblings, and he's, like, talking to himself a lot of the time.
Right.
Yeah, it's very, very adult, very weird. There's no character development, I guess. Like,
yeah.
The kids are just terrible.
Isn't it like a little dark too? Because I remember it. Because the whole setup of the movie is that they go to this amusement park, right?
Yeah.
And then of course because like Bébé's kids they're kind of like these sort of like punk gangster kids, and they all, they get into mischief and everything, right? And it reminds me a lot of that episode of The Simpsons, actually, when they go to like Duff Gardens or something like that, or Krusty. Is it Duff Gardens? I think it's Duff Gardens, right? And like the kids just start like, misbehaving and stuff.
When did they go to Krusty World? Krusty Land?
Krusty Land, that might have been it. Yeah.
I don't remember Duff Gardens, but yeah, anyway, like the movie is just, it's really, really strange, but it's better than the game.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you that right there.
Oh, yeah.
And so the reason why I'm bringing up Bébé's Kids at all, there would be no other reason other than this, because is because this week we're talking about games that are based off of movies.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that, like, it's existed as far back as the days of Atari, all the way up until even now. I mean, you see it on the shelves every time, like a hit movie comes out. Of course, you're going to see a video game alongside of it too. I mean, it's like companies have always tried to profit off of movie merchandising and licensing through like toys and apparel and stuff. So of course, once they realize they can make video games like really cheaply and quickly and push them out before Christmas,
let's do it.
Let's do it. So, yeah.
So what we got on the what's the word for what's coming up next?
The slate?
The slate?
What's slated?
Something else,
I don't know.
but it was 2 syllables. Anyway, go ahead, Will.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you structured. So we're gonna kind of base it off of like our last week's episode. We each kind of have a little bit of a list of games that we were gonna talk about.
Mm-hmm.
At least the way I structured mine is I picked a good one, and I picked a bad one, and I picked a really, really bad one.
I think all of mine are terrible. Wait, no, all of them are good except for one. Go ahead.
All of them are good?
Anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. So
I think I just threw a wrench in this podcast structure.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, I want to start with good movie-based game, because movie-based games, they do get a lot of crap nowadays for being mostly shovelware, things that are designed really quick, designed really cheap, and they play terribly, and they don't really do the original property justice. They're just kind of a way of making money off of it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start off on a high note, start off with a really good example of what movie-based games could be. So my first game on this list would be, as a good game, would be Ghostbusters, the video game from 2009.
Yeah, you've talked about this before.
Yeah, I mentioned a little bit on our Ghostbusters podcast.
You said you
Ghostbusters
claim that I would like this.
I really think you do. First of all, because
I do.
well, no, I do think you would like it. I love this game. I mean, okay, maybe I don't love it, but I really like it.
You
as
like it
a
like
game.
I like
I
you
like it. Because all right, so Ghostbusters the video game, essentially it acts as a third movie. So if you're a big fan of the first two the original Ghostbusters movies with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson, let's not forget his name this time around. So it basically is a third movie. I think it was actually written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. So they wrote the script and the dialogue and everything, and they got all of the original cast members with the exception of what's his name from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
I'm blanking.
Okay.
Holy crap. Wait. No, I got it. Wait.
What is it? What is it?
Hold on.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was also in Spaceballs.
He was also in
Dark Helmet.
fuck.
Rick Moranis.
There we go.
That's it.
Yes.
So is everybody?
Good job, Joey.
So they don't have Rick Moranis and they don't have Sigourney Weaver, but they have all the original cast members that return in this, and the story is pretty awesome too, because it actually builds on a lot of the plot points from the first two movies. So it kind of connects both the first and second Ghostbusters and expands on that. And I mean, there were some things that they didn't do very well in the game, you play as this generic silent white dude protagonist who's okay, you're the new guy, so obviously they're gonna treat you like the new guy. It's all right, come on, newbie, we're gonna take you out and show you how everything is
you
done.
don't get to actually play as any of the previous Ghostbusters.
No, you're just some generic silent protagonist who's only there to basically let the cast kind of talk down to you, and you're basically there to listen in on them as they interact with each other, which is fine, because everything else about the game is done very well. The gameplay it's kind of a third person over the shoulder kind of shooter, sort of the
Resident Evil.
Yeah, the newer Resident Evil games, but it's the way that the the proton pack and everything and catching the ghost is set up is done very well. You actually really get to experience that thrill of looking for the ghosts and catching them and wrangling them into the traps and everything, and it's done so well, which is awesome. It's and even though the game is short, the story moves along at a really good pace, and it actually it much like the movies, it actually straddles that line between oftentimes being really funny, but yet really creepy. There are a lot of times when you go through some of the levels and you're just by yourself, you're alone. Your teammates are off doing something else, and it's super creepy. It almost feels like a survival horror game, Resident Evil or Silent Hill or games like that.
Have you ever played the Luigi's Mansions?
I haven't, no.
Because I feel like those games too, they're probably really similar in the way they capture the ghosts.
Yeah.
At least from what you're describing, but
yeah,
I think those those also have a very good environment to them, the mansion. Even though the second one's for 3DS, so it's super tiny, but
yeah, still.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think you should play those too.
I think so too. I think I would like those games a lot. But the reason why I bring up the Ghostbusters video game and why I feel like it does such a good job as a movie-based game is it's completely, first of all, it's completely catered nostalgia. It's basically catering to fans of Ghostbusters, but it's done with the maximum respect. Maximum respect to the spirit of the original movies. It doesn't just slap the Ghostbusters name on the game and then they just throw out some really crappy quick design game. This game was it was a labor of love for everybody who grew up loving the series, and even for like, for Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, this was a way for them to like finally get their, their third movie out there in, I'll bet in a game form, and give it to the fans, because people had been waiting for a new Ghostbusters movie for quite a long time. And of course, now
Well, they got this and then nothing after that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely nothing
absolutely
after
nothing.
came after this game.
Nothing at all, And what's cool is like what I found really funny too was that even the trophies are like specifically catered to fans, because all the trophy titles and the trophy and achievement titles, they're all just lines from the movie, and they're basically
that's a good idea.
Yeah, so it's like you got trophy titles that are like lines from the film, like you got to try this pole, or I looked at the trap, Ray.
Is there one that says this man has no dick?
Unfortunately not, but that would have been hilarious. Actually, that guy's in there too. The guy who plays William Atherton, the guy who plays
Dickless.
Well, yeah, Dickless, Walter Peck. He's actually in the game too, and and his character actually is the guy that's basically running a tab on how much you destroy the environments. So basically, like however much you destroy the game environments, he charges you that much at the end of the.
That's pretty
missions.
good.
So it's pretty great. I really do think you would love it. And I mean, the single player campaign, it's so fantastic. For anybody who loved the first two Ghostbusters movies, you will love the single player campaign. I can't talk about multiplayer because at least on the PS3, they shut down the servers because it's non-existent. But apparently you could still play multiplayer on Xbox 360. So if you can go back and track down a copy on like eBay or Amazon or wherever, you could still play it. If you can find friends who actually also have the game.
There's no local?
No local. No, it's only through servers, which I thought was kind of stupid too. But yeah, Ghostbusters is a video game. That's my first game of this list for being a good game.
Yeah.
So take it away, Joey, with our next one.
Okay. Well, on my notes, I have the bad ones listed first, but I'll go with the good ones. Fine.
All right.
I'll follow you into the abyss.
Yeah. We just sink lower and lower as this episode goes on.
All right, so my pick for probably the best one is going to be Alien Isolation.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
And we've played this, albeit 2 hours of it.
Yeah,
together.
Yeah,
but it's incredible. Like this is probably one of the best movie-based games that I've played. And so it's basically a direct sequel to the movie Alien. It takes place in between Alien and Aliens, and you play as Ripley's daughter,
right? Who only ever gets really mentioned in the film, briefly.
Yeah, and by the time she wakes up, or by the time Ripley wakes up in the second one, she's already dead. Or whatever.
Exactly, because it's like you find out it's like 80 years later.
Yeah, and so this is basically her story of her trying to figure out what happened to her mom. And boy, it's really, really good.
Yeah,
they do a really good job at basically recreating the entire world, and it's done with like such precision to detail. Like everything about it, everything about the space stations, everything about the tunnels, like the lighting, everything is really, really just spot on with the first movie.
Yeah, like they even nailed down that kind of like old timey 80s computer feel of
everything
all
about like the technology still feels like it's stuck in that time period. It's not even 80s, it's 1979.
Yeah,
when the first movie came out.
Well, even just the feel of the game too. It's like that feeling, because it's not a straight up shooter where you're expected to just like get bigger and better guns so that you could.
It's more of a stealth game.
Yeah, it's more of like it's like a survival horror stealth game.
It's basically they just took what people liked about the first movie and then just made that into a game. Not like what they did with Aliens, in which they made that terrible travesty Colonial Marines.
Yep.
I have yet to play it. I've yet to really even watch anything about it, but
it looks really
I'm sure
bad.
you've seen more of it than me.
Yeah, I remember like when it came out, because I like Aliens a lot, and I wanted that game to be good because I think that had been in development for quite a while.
Yeah, like Sega, was it Sega?
Yeah, I think it was Sega.
They were working. It's funny that they would release both of these games.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have one that's like they're both on complete opposite ends of the spectrum of good and bad.
Yeah,
one's like shitty and one's really good.
Like I can't imagine Isolation being that much different if Colonial Marines was good, because apparently like Alien Isolation was in development a lot longer than the Colonial Marines.
Supposedly. But it was a good idea because when you get down to it, I mean, Alien and Aliens, even as movies, they're very different
They're
movies.
completely different. They're different directors, hugely different tone.
Yeah. And that was the thing that made like the first Alien so scary too, was just like it was just the one alien, and it was just stalking like the crew the entire time. And that's what the game does really well.
Yeah, it's slow. Like it doesn't. You can go like maybe the first 4 hours without even seeing the alien at all.
Yeah.
But you know that it's there, just like in the movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's slow. It's like it's just tense. It's dark the whole time. I mean, this game does pretty much everything a horror game should do. Not like those games that call themselves survival horror, but they're really just action. And you just shoot heads off with tons of gore, death, dismemberment.
Yeah.
Basically what Resident Evil has turned into nowadays.
Exactly. And there's still always that debate about like the better way to scare people is like either the jump scares, which Resident Evil has always been known for, or the more psychological kind of horror that you get from just knowing that something is out there, and always being aware of its presence without actually ever seeing it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I thought Alien Isolation did really well, because if you go back and you watch our playthrough on our YouTube channel, we didn't actually even get to the part where the alien appears. But it's still like creepy because the environment itself is like creepy as hell, and it does such a great
like
job.
Shut down like space station.
Yeah, because it's a space station that's been decommissioned, and like everybody on the space station was basically like, going fucking nuts at that point. And that's scary as hell.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to make a scary game. It's another thing to make one that uses like a franchise like Alien.
Yeah.
And uses it well.
Yep.
That's something that people still have problems with, I think.
Yeah. And it's too easy, like going back to like Aliens as the franchise, and Aliens the movie in particular. It's too easy to basically like make a straight up shooter. Like, I think like Alien versus Predator was like the last game before Colonial Marines, where you got to choose what race you wanted to play as, and each one had like drastically different styles.
Yeah.
It was still just a straight up shooter.
Yeah, like they didn't really use what was like important about the franchise in the game. They just it was kind of a wallpaper, so to speak.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You just take any shooter and you can like paint a face of the alien on top of everything that's around it, and it doesn't feel like an Alien game. It feels like a shooter with the name Alien over it.
Yeah,
but not this one. Alien Isolation is really good.
Yeah, so definitely check it out. It's available on all the major
It's available on Steam,
consoles,
Best Buy, probably at your local GameStop as well.
Yeah.
Back of a guy's truck. What is Alien Insulation?
Alien
It's the newest game, man. You gotta play it. It's a release that never came out, man. It's good.
It's good.
Go buy it. Buy it for me. All right, I'm kicking back over to you, Will.
All right. Well, like I said, I broke it down.
Let's get bad.
Good and bad and ugly. So we're gonna talk about a bad game here. So the bad game that I picked was Street Fighter the movie, the game.
The movie.
No, just the movie, the game.
Okay.
So it was released in 1995. So basically, if you've ever followed the Street Fighter franchise, there was a live action movie back in, I think, 1994. It came out, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme as
Raul Julia,
and the late great Raul Julia, who played him Bison. Van Damme was Guile, and yeah, it's like,
who else was in that movie?
Kylie Minogue played Cammy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but yeah, so. Yeah, back then, of course, that was like when Street Fighter 2 was like a really popular game. So of course they're like, let's make a movie based on this game, and they came with Street Fighter the movie, which was,
it's okay. Yeah, I'll say one thing before you go on.
Yeah, go ahead, take it away from that.
I'm sure when it first came out, people hated it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's one of those movies that's become kind of endearing.
Yeah,
because of how much they destroyed the franchise in terms of movies since then.
Yeah, that's true.
When we compare it to something like The Legend of Chun-Li or other things that have come out, at least with video game movies, you look back at Street Fighter and all of a sudden it doesn't look half as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like the camp factor in that movie, like the movie is campy. Let's,
Yeah.
we'll go back and we'll say that. It's a campy kind of B movie almost, but it was with A-list actors and everything. But it's done in a way where it's like you look back on it now and it's kind of funny. Like it almost like it doesn't take itself seriously, which can be funny. I mean, I feel like the Dead or Alive movie actually was a lot like that too. It's like it looked like it was supposed to be a big A-list movie, but it just had the comedy and the acting of a B movie, which was funny. And I don't think it's a bad movie because of that.
DOA.
Yeah,
was
DOA.
DOA.
Huh?
A Dead on Arrival.
Dead or no, Dead or Alive. But yeah. So all right. So let's go back to talk about the game. So
they made a game off of the movie, off of the game?
Exactly. So it was a 2D fighting game that was based on a movie that was based on a 2D fighting game. So already it's like you got all these layers of like, okay, why would you even make this first of all? Because first of all, you're making a game that it's an obvious money grab to capitalize on the movie. But the funny thing is, it's like you're putting it in direct competition with the game that the movie is based on. So you're making a fighting game that's supposed to be like, it's like, well, like what other games are there on the consoles or in arcades? Oh, Street Fighter 2.
Okay, well, I mean, at the time, what did they have out? Did they have Super and Turbo out?
They probably did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they were releasing, or Capcom probably thought, we've released enough editions already. Like, what's this is just another one of them.
Yeah.
Like, but, it's not something that I think would cannibalize their businesses, except it would only do that if it was good, if it was really good, and people would buy the movie, the game
instead. Yeah, but the problem was it wasn't. It was atrociously bad.
Do you know who it was developed by?
I do not actually,
because it's surprising that they didn't just kind of slap the skin of the movie over the game.
Yeah, which you would think would actually be a lot better to do, because Street Fighter already has like a solid engine, got solid mechanics to it. But no, whoever developed Street Fighter, the movie, the game,
they wanted to make it different.
They wanted to make it different, but similar enough that people who were already into Street Fighter would go out and get it. Because like, all right, so the whole thing about the game is that they built a fighting engine around the game, but it's a lot more similar to Mortal Kombat in that it focuses on like juggles and like air combos and stuff like that. In fact, also the game looks like Mortal Kombat. It's got that whole
use like the motion capture, like real people look to it.
Exactly. But the thing is, I feel like they cut frames out of it too, because like everything looks so stilted. It looks very, very like very quick and fast and cheap. Cheap is the biggest word. It feels cheap, just the way it looks. So it's funny that they actually would go out and take the design sensibility from like Mortal Kombat for a Street Fighter game, But what they tried to do is that they tried to connect it enough to the original series by giving all the characters their signature moves.
Mm-hmm.
Guile's got the Sonic Boom, Ken has the Hadouken, Chun-Li's got her spinning bird kick and lightning legs and all that. But I mean, yeah, it's just the production values are what really, really kind of kills it too. It's like it just screams like cheaply made. And I assume that they probably also had a very tiny window of production time, to make its release date.
Yeah, to get it out.
Yeah.
Before the movie started getting terrible.
Well, and probably also for Christmas too, because I think it came out the year after the movie did. But if you look at when it was released on consoles in North America, it was released in November. So you got to figure that they wanted to get this out before Christmas.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like most games, that are licensed, you're not out by Christmas, it's not going to sell at all. That's the only time that you could sell that. Oh, and here's another fact about it too. Apparently, there's two versions of the game. There's the home version and the arcade version, both of which are completely separate games.
But they're completely different too?
Yeah, well, they're supposedly different games that were made separately, but they look the exact same, and apparently, they're both really bad. So, yeah.
It's not something I would want to spend my quarters on.
No. If anything,
if you were to go into arcade and you see Street Fighter the movie and then Street Fighter 2 Turbo or whatever one.
Yeah, which would you pick?
Actually, now I would want to at least try the
You'd
movie.
want to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would try it out too, just for the sake of like trying it out, you know. But I mean, I would say for everybody out there, especially who, people who can't really, I mean, you're probably not gonna find a copy of this in arcades nowadays anyway. They probably gutted all of those machines for for parts in particular.
They put them in a giant landfill and just set it on fire.
like
You're the fire.
Yeah, really. But yeah, if you want to go check it out check out the atrocity that is Street Fighter, the movie, the game, I would recommend going to Maximilian's channel. He was doing a series called Street Fighter like Legacy 2016 that examines all of the Street Fighter games,
Yeah.
from the first one all the way up until, I mean, I think he got up to like the Street Fighter 3 series before he stopped it. But yeah, he did one episode about Street Fighter the movie, the game, and you get a really good sense of like
How terrible it is.
how terrible it is. Yeah. So I would recommend, going in, checking out Maximilian's channel on YouTube and watching this bad game in action.
Bad games.
Bad game. All right, Joey.
Oh,
So what else do we got
let's see.
moving down this circle of
I
hell?
don't have many bad ones. I didn't write too many bad
Well,
examples.
that's okay. Okay.
Because for one thing, you kind of already expect games like that to be bad.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, not necessarily to say that, every single one is going to be bad, but just overall, the quality of movie-based games has not been very good.
Yeah.
There are several exceptions, though, especially in like the 16-bit era, like when Street Fighter, the movie, the game came out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those exceptions, I think, are the Super Nintendo Disney games.
Oh, yes.
And not Super Nintendo, I will say 16-bit, and here's why. Like during the whole time of movie-based games, like especially during the 16-bit era, Disney was kind of like just throwing stuff out there, seeing like what would stick. So there were a lot of games that were based off of movies, and a lot of them felt kind of copy paste. But there are a couple that do stick out to me, and well, actually, the one that sticks out the most is Aladdin for Genesis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember you really, really loving that game.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why this game is so good, and I'll tell you why the Super Nintendo version is inferior, which maybe a lot of people might disagree. Do you?
To be honest, I think I only ever played the Genesis one. That was the one. I think I rented that from Blockbuster, and I never played the Super Nintendo one because I thought it was the same game.
No,
so.
they're completely different. They're made by completely different companies too.
Oh, okay.
And so the Genesis one was made by Virgin Interactive, who did I think a lot of the other Genesis Disney games,
Right.
because they had some kind of partnership or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the ones made for the Super Nintendo, all the Disney ones were made by Capcom.
I remember that.
And so if if you remember Aladdin, they also did The Lion King. They also did Goof Troop.
Goof Troop, I
which is-
love
yeah.
that game. That was a great game on the Super Nintendo.
But that's not based off of a movie.
It's not.
It's a TV show.
Yeah.
It's different.
That's why we're not talking about it.
But yeah, Aladdin for the Genesis, it's probably like thing is I never owned a Genesis. I only played it like from at other people's houses or on emulator.
Yeah.
But that game is probably one of my favorite like movie-based games ever made.
All right.
And it's the one game that always stuck out to me as being really, really faithful to the actual source material. Like they did so much to make the game like the movie. If you compare the graphics between the two games for the Super Nintendo and Genesis 1 actually looks like the movie. Like
Yeah.
the animations of the characters and the enemies, they all look really, really authentic. Like it looks like they took stuff from they went over to Disney and they asked them, "Hey, can we get some of your animation frames so we can use them in the game?" And then they built it based off of that.
Yeah. I always remember that being kind of like the big thing about the Genesis version too, is even just like the color palette, I think was
Yeah,
like
it's really,
spot
really
on.
yeah, it's super good. If you look at Super Nintendos, it's kind of like it looks. There's got to be like some kind of word for it, but it looks like some kind of gradient over it. It looks kind of weird to me. I don't know
Yeah.
why. Like they try to make it kind of look rounded and three-dimensional, but it just makes it look kind of odd. But aside from that, the Genesis one also had better music because the music was basically lifted straight from the movie.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah,
they
they
didn't
actually
have
used it.
lyrics, they didn't have any singing or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
of course not.
But
Not on a cartridge.
when you play the music behind the scene of Aladdin jumping through the town and avoiding the guards, like it makes you feel like you're actually part of the movie. Whereas Super Nintendo is kind of, these sound alike knockoffs that it just makes you feel like something is not quite right.
Yeah. And it's like that. I think that idea too of feeling like you're playing part of the movie. That's a big draw about those kind of games.
Yeah, like
if you're
just like
making a
in
licensed
Alien
game.
Isolation, you get the same feeling that Ripley did
Yeah.
when you're hiding from the alien in the vents or whatever.
Exactly.
This
you feel
is-
like you're
this-
part of that world.
Yeah, this is it.
Just had to make that Disney joke there
Ugh.
since we're talking about it.
But yeah, I think it does do a lot to make you feel like you're in the movie. You get a sword in the Genesis one.
Did Aladdin have a sword in the movie?
He had it in the final scene.
Oh.
He stabbed Jafar when he was a snake.
Oh yes. Now I remember.
Okay, if Jafar turned back into a human after he got stabbed from the snake, where would he have? Like, I'm
Hey man,
trying to figure out where that stab wound would
it's like
be.
you would know better than me. I mean, I know you love Aladdin.
But yeah, you get a sword. Violence always better with Genesis.
Yeah, because it had more attitude.
Yeah.
That was the thing back then in the console
It was
generations.
all about blood and stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, it as opposed to the Super Nintendo where you just jump on people's heads.
Yeah,
Just like every other platformer
exactly.
at the time.
It's like the Mario effect, But yeah, I remember Lion King also being really good too. I think you have that one though.
I have
for
it.
the Super Nintendo.
I hate it because
Really?
it's annoying. That what everyone talks about, right? In that
Yeah.
game, the level with the giraffes.
It's all right.
No.
Jurassic Park, the game, like the side-scrolling one, also suffered from
Which
something
one was
like
that?
that. Do you ever remember the Jurassic Park side-scroller games?
I've seen it. I don't remember what it was called.
I think it was just called Jurassic Park, but it was like they had one for the Super Nintendo and they also had one for the Sega Genesis, which I think they were very similar games too, but they were like
They had their
slightly
differences
different.
just
Yeah.
like this.
I had the Genesis version for that one too, and the Genesis version was way better also.
Yeah, there's something about like Genesis, even though if you ask a lot of people, they'll probably say Super Nintendo had a lot more quality games.
Yeah,
The ones that when you can compare the two, like Aladdin or like Jurassic Park, you
Yeah.
can see like clear advantages and much more effort put into some of these Genesis versions, which
Right.
is pretty surprising to me.
yeah, exactly. Because it's like when you had those games that were released on multiple platforms, because that was kind of a rare thing. I feel like back in the days to have
Yeah,
have
aside
the
from
same
like
game
sports games, maybe.
Yeah, but having a game on like both the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, you didn't see that very often.
Well,
you know?
I want to say that there were a few games that were released on both.
Mm-hmm.
You probably didn't see it too much with the big name games. 'Cause,
Oh,
like
yeah.
the ones that the consoles are known for, like Street Fighter was mainly Super Nintendo,
Right,
Like,
but
because
it was released on the
because Genesis had 3 buttons, you couldn't do anything with it,
Right.
until they released like a 6-button controller, and then they ported it and all that and stuff. But like stuff like Earthworm Jim, like it
Oh,
was
yeah.
released on both, and they had some differences. Like a lot of it had to do with like very very minimal things, like
Mm-hmm.
not a whole lot of difference between something like Aladdin for the Genesis and Super Nintendo, but there's really really minor differences, which I don't remember right now, so I
Yeah.
won't say what they are.
Well, because it's like you said, you didn't even have a Genesis back in the day.
Yeah, so I
it's-
didn't play that version, but
Yeah, it's kind of a moot point. Like what 20, 25 years later, anyway.
yeah.
Because now you can just go enjoy them all on
Emulator. I mean, emulator.
on the old systems themselves, right? Yeah, it's so easy to get. Anyway,
So that was my bad one, but not really. That was a good one.
it was still pretty good. Yeah, but
I don't have a good, bad, and ugly. Sorry.
that's all right. It's fine. So I guess I'll move down to this is kind of my last game, so
Okay.
you'll get a lot more chances to talk after this anyway.
Sweet.
So I mentioned Jurassic Park, the game, earlier, but that's not the one I wanted to talk about as my ugly game. This one is a game that's just like, it's on this list for a different reason than just like slapping a movie license on it. So I'm going to talk about another Jurassic Park game because it's fucking Jurassic Park. Of course I have to talk about it. So this one is Jurassic Park Trespasser for the PC. This was a game that was released in 1998. So actually it came out...
It's like after Lost World?
Yeah, around the time of, or a little bit after Lost World, I think.
Lost World was like 97.
Yeah. So it's like a little bit right after. So for those of you that do not remember Trespasser, and I'll completely forgive you for that because it's, you don't really hear about it so much these days. The concept, first of all, this was every Jurassic Park fan's like ultimate dream for a game. It was a first-person shooter / exploration game where you could venture through the, it takes place on Site B, which the Lost World takes place on, Isle Sorna, not the main park, but like the experimental one where they actually made the dinosaurs.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, but anyway, it was like, you could explore Site B, and the movies, they talk a lot about like what was going on Site B, but it's like, of course, by the time all the characters get there in the movie, it's been abandoned, and like, you don't get to see like a lot of the island because you don't get to see a lot of the island because that's not really the point of the movies, and the movie is very different from the book, which explores it in more detail. So this was kind of the way that they could bridge that gap between the movie and the book, is by actually making a game where you can explore this island.
Sounds dreadfully boring.
Oh, no, I mean, it's like
I want to see dinosaurs. I don't want to be exploring.
Well, and that was also the thing, though, is like that's the other part of it. Not only could you explore the island and see it in greater detail, but you had to like also fight off the dinosaurs, which are all roaming around the island, just doing their thing,
poking them. Hey, hey, dinosaur.
Yeah. So you got to let
just bothering them all the time.
And so that was the big thing. Is it was a really great concept. It was the kind of game that I think everybody wanted from Jurassic Park as a franchise, because you had like the side-scrolling games on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, and you had some of the more like there was a point-and-click adventure for the Sega CD back in the day that nobody played, but that was also a pretty great game too, from what I remember. And yeah, now that at this time, like computers were starting to get a little more powerful. You had like physics and 3D graphics and everything. So hey, Jurassic Park, it's a big franchise. Let's do something with it, something ambitious. And that was the big thing, is it was very ambitious. I think at the time they had Steven Spielberg involved in it. DreamWorks Interactive were the people that were going to produce this game and everything. So you had a lot of money that was put into this game. And so two of the big sellers for this game and two of the big ideas that they wanted to implement were like having like a really great, amazing physics engine where like everything in the world, had weight, had physics to it.
Everything ragdolls all over the place.
Supposedly at the time they were developing like this really good physics engine. And then second of all, they wanted to program all the dinosaurs in the game with a really extensive like AI, like artificial intelligence. Like at times each individual dinosaur would be feeling a different thing. Like, the T-Rex is hungry, so it's going to ignore the player and search for like food that it would eat. Like it's going to go track down like a Triceratops to eat or something. Or like, it's feeling very passive, so it's just going to avoid you unless you shoot it or something, and then it's going to go aggro on you. So those were like two of the big sellers for this game. But in actuality, when the game was released, both of those things actually led the game to being like a really horrible, unplayable mess. Because mainly like the physics was really weird, because basically instead of you just holding a gun like you do in most like first-person shooters, you actually have the hand. You see your hand on the screen, and it bends at like the wrists and the joints and everything, which is really weird. It reminds me of like probably Archery, that game we played on the channel. And yeah, it's like, so it made handling weapons and objects in the world a much more complicated task than it really should have been. Like you actually have to go up and maneuver the hand to pick something up. And then you had to like, especially with guns, you had to like aim the guns around in order to see. You guys can't see it, but I'm actually demonstrating it for Joey right here.
It looks gross.
And yeah, you had to aim the guns in order to shoot the dinosaurs. So half the time, if you were trying to aim it, you had to like worry about not only where the hand is moving, but where the gun is going to move, because it has
why?
physics.
So do they only put the physics engine into like the forearm or something? Like you couldn't actually move the hand or the gun itself?
No, it
Like
was
there was like inertia for every
yeah,
single.
no, exactly.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's like all the physics, like the carrying physics, are in your arm and not in the guns or anything. So when you're picking up like key cards or something, when you're picking up like blocks and things, you're maneuvering the arm, not the actual object itself. So it just
Sounds
it's
hilarious.
so awful, and it's like you can't even do the simplest things, and God forbid you're trying to aim a gun at like a velociraptor that's running at you, at like 40 miles an hour. And that leads to the second problem was the AI. So the AI was so complex in the game that oftentimes it just led to problems with the dinosaurs like not even reacting properly. Like sometimes they'll just sit there spinning in place. Sometimes they'll all just like aggro on you. And I think the biggest thing was that like with a lot of like even the velociraptors, there was a problem with the AI where they wouldn't even follow you into the buildings, which was supposed to be like a big thing where they would chase you and track you down. And if you were hiding in a room, they'd be able to open the doors. But they won't even come into the building. So all you got to do is find shelter and then just you could pot shot them right there if you could even get the aiming to work. So
I think it seems to me what you're telling me is that a lot of this game's badness has to do with the technical limitations at the time. It seems like
it really does, because honestly, like you think about the concept. The concept is so cool. It's like I would love to spend like all those hours like exploring Jurassic Park in greater detail, even Site B in greater detail. That was like I think one of the biggest things that I was hoping would be good about this game. And that also fails because I mean the game drops the ball on those concepts, mainly because one, for when it comes to exploring the island, everything just feels so empty and so devoid of life. There's like nothing in these buildings. These buildings just look like giant boxes with like smaller boxes in them. It doesn't feel like people were actually like there.
Yeah, like it's one thing to make a complete game, ship it out and have it be terrible. It's another thing to make something that's a little bit too ambitious and not have everything that you want to have in it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me like with this game that they tried a little bit too much, and when they realized that they couldn't make these things work, they just kind of just left it there and put it out anyway.
Yeah, exactly, because you figure that game, I think the game was in development for quite a number of years. So it was probably something where they ran out of money, they ran out of time, like, and like you said, this was like a year or two maybe after The Lost World had already been out. So at this point, it was just like, all right, guys, we just got to get this out the door. This has to be like finished.
Yeah, it's not like they put it out and were like, yeah, we're proud of this.
Yeah.
And then it's terrible. That's a completely different thing.
Right. And the second thing that really sucks about like them not hitting the concepts was actually like, there's so few dinosaurs in the game. And that's supposed to be a big thing about Jurassic Park, is that there are all these species of dinosaurs. I mean, yeah, you'll get like the T-Rex and you'll mostly fight off velociraptors in the game. And you'll see a couple of the herbivores like the brachiosaurs and like the stegosaurus and stuff, but you really can't interact with a lot of them. Mostly the enemies that you're going to be fighting off are the velociraptors. And they just like, I think they just use colors like palette swaps on them to make them, to differentiate them over the course of the game. And I mean, you would think that like in the story of Jurassic Park, this Site B, this is where they did all their experimentation. This is where they actually did all the experiments to create the dinosaurs. It's like you would think there'd be a lot of variety in there, but no.
Yeah, just a lot of like nasty looking things.
Yeah, like there were. I think they tried to touch on that in Jurassic Park 3, but it's like, again, let's ignore that for now.
Okay.
But yeah, and they just kind of like left it the way it is. They didn't bother like making all these other new dinosaurs or different ones. They just kind of went with like a handful of like the ones you see in the movie and the fan favorites, and that's it. It's kind of a waste in that respect.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Have you ever played that the arcade game? Jurassic
Yeah,
Park? The
I
one
have.
where you sit in the booth.
Yep.
And it rocks around.
Yep.
Oh man, that was at Chuck E. Cheese.
That was a great
down
game.
in Colma or whatever.
Yeah, that was a great game. Unlike
I
Trespasser.
love that game.
Yeah, the funny thing about Trespasser is there are still people who are actually really passionate about modding the game and making it playable now. There have been a lot of mods for it over the years.
I'm
like to
surprised
fix the
nobody
graphics.
decided to just like rebuild the game itself.
It's funny that you say that, because there's actually been 2 big attempts so far to remake the game, 2 fan remakes. One is, there's a couple that I looked up. One is called Intruder. Isle Sorna, which is it's by like an Australian developer. I think he tried to kickstart the game like a year ago, and it completely flopped. So
Yeah.
I saw some demos of it. It's like it doesn't look that that great in terms of like the gameplay and stuff, but like the actual like island design looks really good. You know, he put a lot of time into like detailing all of the the locations and everything from the original game.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think it's just a one guy doing it, so that's also probably why it's taken so long and it's not as great. But the other one that looks really good so far is called Trespassing. Yeah.
Why they gotta keep the same name?
I don't know. Maybe just to, maybe because they want to like keep the spirit of it. But that game looks amazing. Like that guy has spent so much time working on the world of the game that it just looks freaking amazing. Like I would hope that he would be able to finish that soon, but I don't even know if like he's even gotten around to working on the engine itself or anything like that, or the gameplay or the story or anything, but it looks amazing. So yeah,
I'm sure people thought that about
Trespasser.
Trespasser?
Yeah, Trespasser. Probably. It hasn't aged very well at all. So yeah, that's my ugly game.
Ugly.
Ugly game.
I mean, let's see. I guess I'll go with an ugly one. I'll go with GoldenEye, because that game is freaking ugly as hell.
It's ugly now.
Yeah.
With all those polygons.
Okay, we all know that GoldenEye is probably one of the best N64 games ever made.
Oh yeah.
Still probably one of the best. Well, hard to compare it with like modern day shooters, but still, it's coveted, I guess.
Oh yeah.
People love it.
It's still a very good shooter, I think too.
Okay, so let's talk about GoldenEye for a second.
All right.
We know that this is an amazing game. You know, it's one that is like ubiquitous with N64 sleepovers everywhere.
Oh hell yeah. It's like the very definition of like multiplayer gaming back in those days.
Yeah, because it was the first one to actually do like this couch like deathmatch kind of thing.
Yep.
Because N64, first of all, had 4 controller ports. PS1 didn't. So that was your only choice right there. And it's a game that actually, I feel like it was the first one that got first-person shooters for the console right.
Oh yeah, definitely. That game controlled like amazing at the time, and that was something you just didn't see on consoles. Was a really good first-person game.
You combine the analog stick with the trigger for one, and then the C buttons, whatever. It was nice.
Definitely.
Thing is, I've never watched GoldenEye ever.
Oh, you've never seen the movie?
I've never seen GoldenEye the movie.
Okay.
And that's what I think makes this game so special, is that because I feel like most people who own it, most people who play it, and most people who absolutely love this game have never seen the movie. Like, think about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it's a game that managed to capture like, all these people's attention, all these awards, but it didn't require you to be a fan of the movie itself.
Yeah, which is funny considering you look at the label on there in the box. It's just a straight up picture of Pierce Brosnan's face on it.
Yeah,
you know.
Like,
but it's funny too because I mean it can also work the opposite way too, where it's like people who went out and picked up the game and really loved the game. That might have been what got them into like the James Bond franchise to begin with. Like that certainly is the case for me. I actually didn't see any of those movies until after I played that game. And actually, now that I've watched quite a bit of them, it's like I actually like that series a lot. Like I do watch like the newer Bond movies as well too, even though those games are not that great.
Do they even make a game?
They still do.
For like the new Daniel Craig version?
I don't know if they made a game for Spectre, the newest movie, but they did make a game for Quantum of Solace, which was like the last one.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah.
No, Skyfall was the last one.
Oh, Skyfall. Well, I remember Quantum of Solace got a game, and it was like, now it's like a third-person shooter, I think, because you actually see Daniel Craig there.
Ooh,
so
I don't
see
know
that. But anyway, GoldenEye.
But you remember the polygons in that game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Weren't they ugly?
Yeah, they were. I mean, like most polygon games back in those days, they don't age very well. But, I mean, it's also not really the point of them. But, it's funny that you mentioned never having seen the movie because that's one of those games, too, that actually does a really good job of translating the movie straight up into a game. And it works. It works really well.
Does it?
Yeah, like all of the levels, all of the missions, they're not all in the movie, but they like a lot of the scenes are. Like, for example, the scene in like that Russian kind of graveyard. That was a very short scene in the movie, actually, but
They kind of like built a state, like a level around it.
yeah, exactly.
I guess to try to get as many locales as possible.
Yeah,
like, for the
exactly.
levels.
And they did a really good job of it too.
Yeah, like when I was playing, every time I played the game, I always wondered, okay, why are we in the jungle? Why are we on the boat now? Why are we
Yeah.
like at the dam? Why is he bungee jumping off? Like a lot of that, just as if you just watch what happens in the game, it doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
okay, why is he launching or why is he at like a rocket launch now? Like, where's all
Yeah.
this coming from?
Or like the tank that's like rolling through the streets and
I'm like,
stuff.
okay, wait,
Yeah.
what?
It doesn't make much sense in the context of just the game, but like when you go and watch the movie and connect it back, it's like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. It doesn't do it. The game itself doesn't do a good job of like telling the story, but the fact that they built these levels around each of the scenes from the movie, that was pretty amazing. And they expanded on a lot of those things. You know, they made really cool missions out of them
Yeah.
too. That's the thing I liked most about GoldenEye. You know, because I didn't always invite people over to play. In fact, for me, I spent more of the game playing single player than anything. So,
I would always just
yeah.
play the boat. I think
That was a fun level.
Frigate?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
The
Is that
frigate,
one?
yeah,
Frigate.
yeah, the one
Frigate.
where you can dual wield like the really good automatic
Yeah.
rifles. Yeah.
Like that was one I played like over and over.
Oh yeah, that level was amazing, and I think that might have been. Correct me if I'm wrong, people, but like that, I think that was the only level in the game that wasn't really based on something from the movie. That might have been the only one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's my favorite then.
yeah, that was my favorite too. Actually, I loved it.
And
a good
I
level.
think just like one thing that I will say about GoldenEye, and one thing that I kind of always thought was funny about it
Mm-hmm.
is that yeah, you're James Bond, but the way the multiplayer is, and everyone knows that multiplayer is the most popular aspect of
yeah.
it. It's like you're no longer really a spy anymore by
Oh,
the time
no.
you get to multiplayer, because you're just running around like shooting people in the face, like running, slapping them all over the time, or all the
yes,
time.
the slap matches.
Like you're no longer a spy anymore by the time you get to multiplayer.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But that's what people remember about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could be anyone who, like any of the characters in the game. That was what was cool too, is that they opened up all these options.
Yeah.
You know, or you could be the asshole that always picked Oddjob because he was so short, and everybody would have to freaking manually aim down to
Yeah.
shoot you. If you did that, you were a jerk back then.
Yeah. Everyone did it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good job. Good job, Rare.
good job. That was a good game.
All right. Do we have anything else?
Well, I mean, you know, we tried to avoid talking about like the main bad movie game that I think everybody talks about,
Oh, what could that be?
E.T.,
Oh, yeah.
the original. Which is funny because, you know, we were talking about it a little bit as we were driving back to your place to film this, to record this episode.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that like E.T. gets a rap for being one of the worst games of all time, and it is. It is.
Don't get you.
You know,
Don't get me wrong. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's a bad game.
But what?
But the funny thing is, I think that kind of, it's a lot like Trespasser, like the Jurassic Park Trespasser, in that the concept behind the game was pretty interesting, and it's actually pretty ambitious for the time frame that they were making it. Like, this was a game that was made in 1982 for Atari. E.T. had just come out, and it was like a hugely popular movie. And then, of course, they basically are like, we got to capitalize on this. We got to make a game for this, and we have to ship it before Christmas, which at that point, I think this was like in October or September. So they had like 10 weeks basically to develop this game. So
Sounds like not gonna happen.
yeah. And so they got like their best, like Atari got their best programmer. They asked him, hey, can you do a game in 10 weeks to ship this before Christmas? And he said, yeah, I got this. And the rest is history.
Yeah, you can. There's a documentary about it on Netflix, I think.
Yeah.
Or if not on Netflix, I'm sure it's elsewhere now. But it kind of detailed everything around the making of the game and whether or not the rumor of all the copies being buried in a landfill in, was it New Mexico,
Yeah.
was true. And they kind of did all the research, went out and got. What did they actually?
Yeah, they actually were there.
Excavate everything.
They did actually. That was a really good documentary. I think it's called Atari Game Over. But yeah, it was. They actually did go out there and dig up the copies, and they did find it. They found them. There were copies there. There were not like as many as people were saying.
It was like millions or whatever. They like took them all and put that. That was the what everyone claimed.
Yeah, and apparently it wasn't just like copies of ET. It was copies of a lot of old Atari games, including like really good ones.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically just a big warehouse dump, like some warehouse that was holding all these games. Like they just decided to dump them because they weren't going to sell. So, but yeah, I mean, that documentary does a really good job of like painting of like showing you what was going on in the minds of like the developers and of the business people at the time, and just to kind of it dispels a lot of that, a lot of the legend behind ET and the legend of it being a bad game, because there's a lot of people out there who, like us even, who call it a terrible game, but I think we might have played it once, on like an emulator, and that's it.
I don't know if you were to ask me, I feel like a lot of these old Atari games, like this one, maybe like Custer's Revenge, even
Oh god.
well, like all the ones that are considered absolutely terrible,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's a little unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly because this was a time when games were not really being made with any care.
Oh yeah.
Like people were just trying a bunch of things out. Like with ET, it was like, oh, let's try to make a game based off of movies since nobody's ever done it before.
Yeah.
And I feel like they should kind of get a pass for that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not like they also don't have like decades, worth of games that came before them.
Yeah,
to build upon.
They never had like all this experience making them. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. They had to innovate.
Why should they be punished till the end of time because of that?
Exactly. And that's kind of when I saw that documentary, I kind of thought a lot about ET after that. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. We give it such a bad rap, for being like that. But the conditions surrounding it were like not exactly ripe. That was something where it's like they set that guy up to fail pretty much. So
I mean, like if anything, I feel like they should be commended.
Oh yeah.
For making something like this. Okay, yeah, I can understand that it very well might have been a completely terrible game. Like it might have been like unplayable, but the fact that they even made something that was even that bad at the time, when everything around it was just squares being pushed into other squares, and you couldn't really discern anything. This made you actually engaged with the game because all of a sudden you're furious about it.
Yeah, even if it's engaging it in such a way where you're like wanting to throw the controller at the screen.
Yeah, I'm sure other games they're just kind of lifeless and you just move a block around and then you get through a maze or whatever and then you win. You don't really feel anything out of that.
It sounds like you're speaking about the Atari Classic Adventure.
Yes, I am.
Which is funny because that's like one of the best games on the Atari apparently.
But I mean, it's so simple. It doesn't really. When I look at that game, it doesn't really make me feel anything. I don't think like, oh, this is such a great adventure, even though I'm just pushing a block through a maze.
You don't see your pixel as a guy.
Yeah, with ET, at least you can tell that it's ET, and there's something
like
happening that you don't understand. Like that makes you that's something that makes you think about the game, even if it's frustrating as hell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, once you know how to play it, I assume that it's like not that bad. You just got to stop falling into fucking pits all the time, somehow, some way, if you can.
So ET.
E.T.
It's a good game, right? Does it get the retroactive stamp of approval?
Oh hell no. Well, you can stamp it if you want, but that'll just be the half pendant right there. So I wouldn't exactly want to play it, if that's what you're asking.
E.T.
E.T.
All right. Well, now that we've ended it on the worst game presumably ever made, I guess we can finish up this episode.
All right.
Oh man. Oh, I thought it was gonna. Are we ending it right now?
Well, I mean, we can move on to our final round.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
So, well, now that you're back from Comic-Con, dude, what's next? What's next on your agenda here?
I mean, we won't have another convention for at least a couple months.
Oh, that's good. Got a break in between.
Yeah, so I went ahead and bought Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about Harvest Moon last week.
Right.
And I was like, this game has sold 1 million copies. One man made it. I'll give it a chance. And it's only $15. I'm about 2 hours in, and it basically feels like Harvest Moon right now.
Oh, there you go.
You can tell that this guy basically wanted to remake this game, but throw in like his own personal touches, which I haven't really gotten to yet.
Right.
The premise is basically identical to Harvest Moon. The way you make money, the way you clear off the land, way you interact with people, even down to like the sprites who are now like I forget the name of it, but there's some kind of other mystical figure that will presumably help you later on with your farm.
Right.
But yeah, even that's the same.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I can see why people are so crazy about it, because it's basically another Harvest Moon with a nice paint job. But
yeah,
well, I mean, I'm only 2 hours in. People have been playing this for like 100 hours plus. But so we'll see what is really different. I mean, coming from someone who really likes Harvest Moon, who played it so much when they were a kid, it's gonna be a little hard to convince me otherwise that this is just nothing. This is anything more than a Harvest Moon clone.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the thing too that I've heard about it, because you look at how many Harvest Moon games have been released over the years too, and not all of them are good. There have been a lot of like bad ones, and I've owned quite a few of them too. But I've heard a lot of good things about Stardew Valley. There are people that are they sing very high praises of it, and those are people typically who did love Harvest Moon as well.
It's probably because the recent games are so terrible. This kind of purifies it down to what is good about Harvest Moon, and kind of runs with that. And
sometimes that's a good thing. I like seeing developers do that these days, is to break down the core essentials of like what made some of those older games good, and do just that, but in a way that's like still a little bit new. Like I assume like once you get farther in the game, there's like more stuff you can do with it than you could in the original Harvest Moon, because I mean, they've tried to, that was the thing, is like they've tried to introduce so many new things to do in Harvest Moon games over the years that like
it just kind of gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like, I mean, you wind up having games like the Rune Factory series, which basically kind of turn it into like an RPG, like where you fight things and stuff and do dungeons. Yeah, so that kind of takes away from the old original formula of Harvest Moon.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably play it more later today, and maybe we'll see. We'll have an update next week and
see how you're
doing. I'll give you my opinions then, whether or not it's actually improved or not.
Well, right on.
We'll see. Go ahead, Will.
Well, me. I mean, I haven't really done too much this past week, although yesterday, Joss and I, we did go to a wedding. We had another one of those here in San Francisco. And the funny thing was, though, it was a steampunk wedding. So,
ooh,
yeah, the bride and
that's my steam.
Is that your steam?
That's my steam-powered whatever.
I was like going to say, like, it was like, I don't know what that sound was.
It's a man stuck in like a steam-powered engine.
I'll take your word for it on that.
Yes.
But, yeah, it was pretty fun. It's like so Joss actually, she's really good at I'll just say it. She's good at cosplaying. She's good at making costumes and sewing and embroidering and doing, and even making stuff like armor. She's been messing around with like craft foam and things like that over the years, because we've been going to PAX so often and going to some of these other conventions that are coming up now. But yeah, so we decided. So of course, when she heard that it was going to be a steampunk themed wedding for one of her high school friends, she's like, "Oh yeah, we are dressing up for that." So she actually, she made both of our outfits. I think for her outfit, she actually took her old prom dress, which still fit, and she modified it and made it into like this really cool like skirt and everything too.
Are there any pictures? Or do you guys have any yourself?
She took a couple of pictures. I didn't really take any, unfortunately, because it was a very short ceremony too. It was like, I think it started at 6 p.m. and it only went until 10 p.m. So it was a really short little ceremony at the Conservatory of Flowers here in San Francisco.
Hey, I know that place.
Yeah,
marriage.
That's where you and Chia got married.
Yes,
a couple of years back. So it was fun. It was fun telling people also like, yeah, this is our second time here as for
I've
a wedding.
Been here before.
We know the drill, but yeah, it was like actually dressing up for it was kind of cool, you know.
Were you the only people dressed up?
Oh no, not at
I
all.
would have loved to have seen that.
Oh
Just
my
like
God.
everyone in regular like formal outfit, and then you walking in with like this,
Yeah,
this steampunk thing.
I
with,
had like
did you have a top hat?
I had
or
a
anything?
bowler hat.
A bowler hat
And
with
we
all
had-
this chains and
Exactly, and
gears
I
and
had
stuff.
like a vest and a nice dress shirt and like gears and clocks and stuff. And I also Josh got me what is it, a pocket watch as well
Oh.
to go along with
Did
it.
it have
So
a chain on it?
yeah, it does. So every time I was like looking at my clock, I would pop it out, you know, and open it up. So that was pretty cool. It's nice because I didn't feel. Normally, I don't like dressing up. Like, I don't even like dressing up on Halloween. So normally, those are situations where, you know, when we go to conventions, I feel super self-conscious. But, you know, it was a wedding, and we weren't the only people dressed up, obviously. And it was her friend, you know, all of her high school friends and stuff. So it was nice because I felt really relaxed. I felt like I was in, you know, felt like I was among like peers and friends and stuff. And obviously, the bride and the groom were very like, you know, it was their wedding, so obviously they're the ones who set the theme. And it was funny because they actually marched into they came in to the Imperial March from Star Wars. That was that was the
God.
music that they played as they were walking in, which was hilarious. And yeah, even during the reception, it's like they had a lot of like really kind of like poppy songs like Take On Me, and they had Journey playing and all those other songs, which was really cool. So that's what I did this past like weekend. That was just yesterday actually. So
Wow.
yeah, next week we have a convention that we're going to.
Which one?
It's called Kraken Con.
Oh, the one. Is it still on a boat?
No. That was a special sort of thing. So Kraken Con, I guess, is I think it's happening in Oakland, California next
Yeah.
weekend. So it's like I think it's a 3-day event too. So this one's the actual convention. It's not like this 1-day convention they have on like the Battleship or whatever that we went
The
to last time.
Battleship. My God.
Yeah. But yeah, so this one's going to be at like an actual convention center and everything. I think it mostly focuses on like independent artists and with this particular focus on anime in particular.
Yeah,
at
that's why
least-
I saw a lot of pictures of it last year, and just like, hey,
yeah.
anime.
Yeah,
That's an anime right there.
it's a lot in anime, you know. And we don't have the sound clip queued up, otherwise we'd probably play it.
I will play it right now.
I love anime.
Ooh, the
Thanks.
magic of editing.
Thanks, Joey. But yeah, that's next week. So that's where I'll be at, supporting our good friend Lauren, also known as Nerdy Cat Crafts. You can find her on Twitter and Etsy and Facebook.
She's not known as that. That's her store name.
Well, that's her store's name, her business's name.
Excuse me, Nerdy Cat Crafts. Can I speak with you?
Yeah. So go check her out online. Her store, don't check her out because, you know.
Okay, this is
taken.
the end.
This is the end, my friends. So as always, thanks again for listening in here at RetroActive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep saying yeah.
Yeah. So if you'd like, you know, if you'd like to look us up more online, we do have a Twitter, we have a Facebook, we've got our lovely Instagram account that we use
Haven't
more
up-
than
we-
either of those things.
Even though it hasn't been updated in a week, but we'll have lots of fun stuff on there.
Lots of fun stuff. I hope. Probably. We should probably think about that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we will catch you here next week on RetroActive.
Goodbye.